Let's get started. So the just-in-time mathematics quick checks are formative assessments that align to the 2016 mathematics standards of learning. These resources were developed by Virginia teachers and mathematics leaders, and they're designed to help teachers identify students with unfinished learning and assist in planning instruction to fill the potential gaps just in time. The VDOE team and today's facilitators recognize that many of you have started school or will soon be starting school, and many of you are either totally virtual or part virtual. So the facilitation team has included within the presentation some strategies for utilizing these quick checks in a virtual setting. These strategies will be shared with you towards the end of today's presentation. It's my privilege today and pleasure to introduce you to today's webinar facilitators who they served on our quick check development team and were instrumental in leading this work. Rhonda Fisher is starting her 17th year in education, most of which has been with Spotsylvania County. She now also serves at as the elementary math liaison for Spotsylvania's 17 elementary schools. So she spends a lot of time responding to emails, which I think a lot of us can identify with. Rhonda's been married for 17 years and has lots of four-legged children, including horses, dogs, and cats on a small farm. She also founded a small animal-related nonprofit to help keep pets with their families throughout difficult circumstances. Our other presenter today is Amy Duffy. This is Amy's 16th year in education, all with Roanoke City. Before becoming a math specialist for her division, she taught third, fourth, and fifth grade. One interesting fact about Amy is that she was actually an English major in college and didn't realize how much she loved math until she started teaching. Amy's been married for 14 years and has two daughters who are 10 and 5. And she also plays the piano at her church. So ladies, we're very excited to have you both leading today's webinar, and we thank you both for all your leadership and work throughout this project. We're going to now turn the session over to Rhonda and Amy, who will provide an overview of the just-in-time quick checks and their potential use in the classroom, as well as strategies for using them in the virtual setting.
Good morning. So our agenda for today is going to be to look at the Recover, Redesign, Restart 2020 plan and what it is, when to use quick checks, when not to use quick checks, components of a quick check, how to use quick checks, how not to use quick checks, quick check availability, and other resources. And as Kristen mentioned, questions can be added to the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. So what is Recover, Redesign, Restart 2020? Back in June, our governor announced a phased reopening plan for Virginia schools. And during that press conference, our superintendent shared the guidance document, Recover, Redesign, Restart 2020. So what is in there? There's plans and how to prepare for instruction and assessment, and those are the key components of the guidance provided in the document. And we're specifically going to look at the assessment piece. Assessment should not be interpreted to mean a testing event. Instead, it's going to be a process of data collection that's ongoing, that is formative for instruction, and is low or even no stakes for the students. It should include just-in-time formative assessments, and we're going to look at what that means coming up. So VDOE knew that there was a need for supporting these assessments. And so they, along with more than 40 math teachers and leaders from around Virginia, collaborated to develop these just-in-time quick checks that we're going to show you to assist you guys in identifying students' unfinished learning while you teach your current grade level content. So what is a quick check? A quick check is a resource that generally includes 3 or more questions. That'll be dependent on how involved the standard is, how many sub-bullets there are. That's designed to reveal the common misconceptions or student errors when learning the content addressed by a standard and a bullet. So we say common misconceptions or student errors because the document would be really long if we could come up with every single possible misconception or student error. So we tried to highlight the ones that would be most common. So in each quick check, you will see all the way down to the sub bullet. And what I mean by that is all the way down to the bullet of a standard. 517 wouldn't just have one quick check. It would be 517A would have one, 517B would have one, 517C, and 517D. So you're going to have separate ones for each bullet, and it's going to be kindergarten all the way up through Algebra 1 for these. So there are many being offered.
So one of the things we're really excited about with the quick checks is that they're very versatile. So the first thing we're going to look at here is what the quick checks allow teachers to do. The first thing it allows them to do is to connect that prior knowledge that students have while still remaining within the current grade level content. It helps them to remain focused on the learning that's happening today, not just focusing on how they're going to catch students up from what they possibly missed before. And it uses just-in-time instruction versus just-in-case instruction, which Rhonda is going to go into a little more detail about in a moment. The quick checks also help teachers identify gaps that students might have in their learning, and it helps to provide additional scaffolding and support that might be required just in time to learn that new content. And finally, it also responds to student needs in real time, and again, within that current grade level context.
So what is just in time versus just in case? Here's an example using the standard 6.2a, which we'll be using throughout our presentation today. The student will represent and determine equivalencies among fractions, mixed numbers, decimals, and percent. If a teacher was using her assessments as just in case for her instruction, we would see this example. This teacher is including a reteaching lesson on representing and identifying equivalencies among fractions and decimals, which is from the standard 5.2a, to all of her students. She is using an entire class block to teach a lesson that most of our students may already understand. However, if we were using the same standard in just in time, this teacher identifies students who have unfinished learning by implementing a quick check of the content of 5.2a prior to teaching 6.2a. She's only going to use about 10 minutes of class time to identify which students need additional reinforcement, and then she's able to only address those students without holding everyone else back.
So we know one thing you're wondering is, where can I find the quick checks? And so to find them, they're going to be located both in the Mathematics Standard of Learning, SOL and Testing, and the Mathematics Instruction pages on the VDO website. That's going to have links to get to all of the quick checks. And if you look to the right, you see in blue, it says just-in-time mathematics quick checks. That's what you're going to see on those pages that you can click to get to the quick checks. Once you click that link, you're going to see at the very top of the page this banner with all of the grade levels so that you're able to click and go straight to the grade level you're wanting to get to. After you click, for example, in this case, 6th grade, You're going to see all of the standards listed, not just by standard, but by bullet as well, as Rhonda mentioned before. And you're going to also see that it's organized by strand. When you do look at that, there are going to be some links that are live and some that are going to be coming soon. So when you're looking through the quick checks that are on the web page at the moment, the ones that are blue are the ones that are already available and you can go ahead and look at and use. The ones that are in black text are the ones that are going to be coming soon. And to add to that, you're going to notice that when you go on there today, perhaps, all of the number and number sense ones are going to be blue. We started there because we felt that was one of the most important ones and what a lot of people start with.
So how do you use quick checks? The most important thing to understand here is that they're very flexible and that there are many ways. And so we're only covering the big ways. You can use them to identify and access supporting and prerequisite SOLs that are necessary for current learning. And when we look at the components, you'll understand what we mean by that. You can use them to consider the most common student errors and misconceptions, like we mentioned. You can use them to plan for new instruction. You can also use them to quickly assess newly taught content from your current grade level to see if they have an understanding following the lessons. And you can quickly identify links to resources that support current grade level content, as well as previous grade level content. What they are not intended for, however, is to be a pre-assessment for an entire unit, semester, or even course of study. They're intended for smaller sections. They are not intended to be a practice SOL test, and you would find that very difficult anyway, as very few of them are multiple choice. They are not intended to be practice packets for independent learning. We understand that many of you are teaching in a virtual or partially virtual hybrid setting. And so we will cover the virtual piece in a little bit, but they're not intended to just be put together and sent home as a packet. They're not intended to be graded assignments or quizzes. Remember how we talked about little or even no stakes? And they are not intended to be a tool for determining course placement for the next year.
So if you look in the chat box, you're going to see a link to the quick check we're going to take a little bit of a closer look at today. So I'm just going to stay quiet for a minute and give you a moment to access that. And just remember when you go to click it that you're going to want to download it instead of just opening it up so you can see everything well. So the first thing we're going to do is look at sort of an overview of the components of a quick check. In every quick check, you're going to find links to the framework for that grade level. You're going to find questions that are designed to look at student errors and misconceptions. And again, like Rhonda has said before, the most common ones. So it's not going to cover all of them, but it will be the ones that are most common to those SOLs. You're going to find teacher notes for each question, supporting resources for that bullet, and then also supporting and prerequisite SOLs. So if you look here, you're going to see the first page of a quick check, in this case for 6.2a, and each section of that has something different. And we're going to take a look here in a minute at each section and talk about what actually is contained in each one.
So at the top of each of your quick checks, you will see a blue underlined standard that is being addressed. And that is your link to the curriculum framework. So even though it doesn't say the words curriculum framework, that is where it is taking you to be able to look further at that standard. Underneath that, you will see what strand is being addressed, the actual standard, and then the bullets that go to that standard. Notice in our example today of 6.2a, only A is listed here. It doesn't show the rest of 6.2, just A, because that is the focus of this quick check. Also, the grade level skills that are listed only apply to A. Below that, you will see two links that actually work within the document. The first one would take you directly to the questions for the student in the quick check. The second one would take you to the teacher notes that are associated with those questions. Below that are links that take you to the VDOE website and take you to those specific content areas. You'll see many supporting resources available for these different standards. For example, 6.2a includes everything from math instructional plans to co-teaching plans, algebra readiness assessments, algebra readiness remediation plans, even tells you the specific words for a word wall available, and in this case, a Desmos activity. There are even others on some other standards. And last but not least, at the bottom of that first page, you will see links to supporting and prerequisite SOLs. It will start with the supporting SOL, meaning other standards within your grade level, before moving to the prereqs. And the great thing about these links is it takes you directly to the quick check with all that information that you just saw for this standard. It gives you all that information for that other standard, as well as the questions you could use. So earlier when we talked about our teacher teaching 6.2a and she wanted 5.2a, all she'd have to do is within her 6.2a, click on 5.2a, and it'll take her directly to those questions.
As we said before, we feel like the quick checks are very versatile. There's going to be a lot of uses for them, but we're going to take a look at some of the scenarios that we think they would be particularly helpful with. And the first one we're going to talk about is how you can use a quick check when you're planning. So in this scenario, we have a group of grade 6 teachers and they're planning together and they're working on 6.2a. So to help facilitate that planning, they're going to access that quick check for 6.2a on the VDOE website. The quick check is going to give them quick access to what is expected for 6.2a, and it's also going to give them knowledge and skills expected from connecting grade levels. So when they pull up the 6.2a quick check, it's going to give them immediate access to that information. It's not all of 6.2, it's just 6.2a. So you see there what that means, and the bullets are just from A. So it's very focused on what they are looking at for that particular SOL. So to determine what students should have learned in grade 5, to see what kind of connection there is, they're going to select the link to grade 5, 5.2a, at the bottom of the first page of their quick check. When they look at that, they're going to see that 5.2a shows them that in 5th grade, students had to represent and identify equivalencies with fractions and decimals, both with and without models. When they look further into 5.2a, it's also going to show them that in 5th grade, they had limiters. They were limited to thirds, eighths, and factors of 100. So this is going to tell the 6th grade teachers that they haven't had any experience with 7ths, 9ths, or 11ths. So that particular information is going to be brand new to their students. Something else that they see when they look at the 5th grade quick check is that percents are also going to be brand new and how they relate to fractions and decimals.
So another scenario would be identifying supporting SOLs from prior grade levels. This teacher is also using 6.2a, and she notices that some of her students are consistently demonstrating some errors or misconceptions. So she goes to 5.2a not for the information as much as to assess the quick check questions from 5th grade. She uses some of the questions to help her identify areas of unfinished learning for these students. So as we mentioned with the flexibility, you don't even have to use the whole quick check. You can just use parts of it based on your needs. So this teacher decides just to use questions 1 and 2 from that quick check because she wants to know where the misconceptions are about fraction and decimal equivalence. Question 1 is going to let her know whether her students can create a fraction and a decimal using a model. So it looks like this. Shade in 3/4 on the grid below, and has a follow-up question of what decimal is equivalent to the fraction shaded in the model. This is going to let her see how her students decide to shade. How do they break up this grid into 4 sections? Do they use equal sections, which is very important? And are they doing it accurately? Question 2 is going to let her know how they do without models. So question 2 asks them to circle all the decimals that are equivalent to 2/8. The responses here are going to let the teacher know whether they think that the numerator and or denominator are the same digits, 2 and 8, or if they understand the correct answer, do they know that 2500ths is equal to 250,000?
Another way that quick checks can be used is as a formative assessment. So in this scenario, we have Mr. Sellers, and at this point, he's introduced the beginnings of 6.2a to his students. And he's talked about the relationship between fractions, decimals, and percents. He wants to provide a quick warm-up activity at the start of class just to see where student understanding is at this time and if they're ready for further instruction. So he uses the just-in-time quick check for 6.2a and decides just to use question 1. Like Rhonda said, it can be used in its entirety, or you can use particular questions to help meet your needs depending on what you've taught and what you're trying to check. So question 1 looks like this. It's asking students to represent 13/20ths on the grid, and then in addition, it asks them what decimal is equivalent to that fraction and what percent is equivalent to that fraction. And so when Mr. Sellers gets these responses, he's gonna know which students might need additional support or more time in those beginning stages and which ones are ready to move on. Within that same day, Mr. Sellers decides that after he finishes his lesson, he's going to use question 2 to see if students have an understanding of simple fractions and their decimal and percent equivalents. So question 2 has a student eating 3/5 of a brownie, and in the question it asks the students to write a decimal that represents that amount of brownie, write a percent that represents that amount of brownie. And it also asks them to use either the grid provided or to make a number line to show what they were thinking. So Mr. Sellers can use this question to see whether students have a better understanding of percents and how they relate to fraction decimals by the end of his lesson that day. So Mr. Sellers has decided he's just going to save questions 3 and questions 4 until he's gotten further into his teaching because that discusses when percents go over 100%, and it also discusses repeating decimals. So if we look at 3 and 4 here, in 3, it's asking them to find the equivalent fraction and decimal for 149%. And then in 4, it asks them to take a look at a scenario where there are some shirts and some of them are a certain color, and take a look at the fraction, decimal, and percent that represents all of that.
So another possible scenario is using a quick check for pre-assessment. So this teacher is concerned that her students may have gaps in prior learning, maybe due to a COVID closure or something else. But she plans to introduce 6.2a today and wants to determine her students' prior knowledge of fraction decimal equivalent. If she's a middle school teacher, since she's doing 6.2a, she probably uses something called a bell ringer. Maybe if you're an elementary teacher, you've called it a warm-up, like in the last one. But she uses the questions from Quick Check 5.2a to do this pre-assessment. And we've already looked at the first one. This time she uses it to determine if they can use the model correctly, and she's focusing on can they determine the equivalent decimal as the follow-up. She's also using question 2 to see if they can identify without a model, but she also adds in question 3, which is using multiple representations of the same quantity. So this is asking which fractions and decimals are equivalent to the fraction shaded in the model below, and they have to circle all that apply to see, do they know what is this as the simple answer of 4/5? That's great, but do they know all those other representations of the same model? She's going to be able to use 5.2a to gauge the amount of background knowledge her students have before she introduces the new content. The extra bonus of this is that these questions also provide opportunities for the students, because it's going to reactivate their prior learning. It's going to help them recall the fraction decimal equivalent and bring it to the forefront of their mind. So in less than 10 minutes, she's gained a lot of information about her students, and she's gotten them ready for learning for that day.
One of the aspects that we're really excited about with the quick checks are the teacher notes. This link on the front page of your quick check is going to take you directly to the teacher notes. And what the teacher notes are, it's a copy of all the questions that are in the quick check. But underneath each question, there's an explanation of students' most common errors and misconceptions. Like we said before, not all, but the most common ones, and what that might indicate. It also talks about possible suggestions for ways you can help students connect the dots and have better understanding. These notes can be really useful for teachers as they begin to assess students and try to figure out what understanding they have, and it helps to inform their feedback as well. So here's an example of teacher notes. We saw this question before where the students were asked to give an equivalent fraction and decimal for 149%. And you see below in red that it says one of the common misconceptions students have is that they don't think percents can go over 100%. So students with that misconception may not understand that connection that is between the percentages and a whole. They might not see that a percent can also be represented as a fractional part of 100, or that even 100% means that it's a whole. So in the teacher notes, it says that students might benefit from work with concrete materials or pictorial materials like base 10 blocks, number lines, and decimal squares and such, and that those help to connect the dots in a way for them to see that 100% is a whole, and then that remaining 49% is a portion of another whole. So that gives them a more visual way to connect those percentages. So teachers can use these teacher notes to try to get ideas of how to maybe do something differently with students to help them gain better understanding.
So as we mentioned before, we understand that many of you are teaching virtually or in a hybrid with some of the instruction being virtual. So we did want to address just a few, again, there are many, but a few possibilities of how you could use these quick checks in a virtual environment. So the first one would be having students complete their work and submit a picture of it using your school division's learning management system, whether it's Google Classroom or Canvas or Blackboard, whatever you are using, being able to submit through that. You could post the question on your shared screen when you're teaching in synchronous sessions and have students do their work on paper or a small whiteboard or the nice cheap version of a whiteboard with a piece of paper inside a sheet protector where they can still use a marker and erase their work after they show it to you. And then students just have to hold it up to view, or you can teach them how to turn their camera and fun things like that. Other possibilities, having students create a Flipgrid video. Have them explain how they solved a particular problem. They can use the whiteboard feature to show their work, and it's great when they're sharing this with other students to see different ways to solve the same kind of problem. You can have students show their work for each problem on Google Jamboard, which provides a free whiteboard, and you can see the different kids at the same time, which is a nice feature. And you could include the selected questions in a Desmos activity builder so students can show their work for teachers to review. One nice thing about doing that is that one teacher could create it and everyone on our team could use the same Desmos activity, and it'll be there for the future.
Thank you so much, Rhonda and Amy. I will take it over from here. As you are aware, there are many quick checks that are already posted on the VDOE website. And if it has a blue hyperlink, they are available. If they are black, that means that we will continue to upload quick checks over the next several weeks. We plan to have all quick checks uploaded to our site by mid-September. And as I mentioned, there are many of them that are already available. I think all of the standards for grade 5 are already there and ready to use for this upcoming school year. We have an opportunity that we would like to share with you that we're very excited about. We are interested in having you participate in a quick check users group. We wish to solicit feedback from teachers and other educators based upon their experience from using the quick checks during the 2021 school year. We're going to ask that you will participate in 4 webinars throughout the school year, and you will receive a stipend for your participation in this opportunity. If you're interested, please complete the Google form that is in the chat box. I believe Kristen has just placed it in the chat box for you. We are currently working on details for this endeavor, and we will then reach out to all of those who've expressed interest later on in September. We will tell you that we've had a lot of interest in this, which is very exciting. This whole endeavor has been exciting for all of us. We've thoroughly enjoyed working on the mathematics, working with all of the educators from across the state, and providing these webinars to all of you. And so we're even more excited about being able to continue this throughout the school year and networking with you on the Quick Check users group. Participated in creating the quick checks, and we want to extend a huge thank you to each and every one of the school divisions for the teachers and the math specialists that worked on this project. Without them, none of this would have been possible. And again, as Amy and Rhonda indicated, there are so many exciting things between the linked resources and the teacher notes. It's just a valuable resource for everyone, not only for this school year, but for many school years to come. We also have some additional information and links that we would like to share with you that may help you as you begin your new school year. These are resources that Tina Mazzacane and the Department of Learning and Innovation have shared during webinars since schools closed last March. So if you, once these links, once the PowerPoint is posted, sorry about that, the PowerPoint is posted on the website, and these links are live, and you can select them and go and read more about it. And if you continue to have questions or want more information about what's been posted, you can reach out to Tina's office or to the Office of Student Assessment, and we would be more than happy to assist you with that. We have provided our contact information for you. And so if you have any questions about the quick checks, about any of the links that have been shared with you today, if you have questions about teaching or assessing students this upcoming school year, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. That's why we're here. So these are the email addresses to the Office of Student Assessment and to the Office of Mathematics. In addition, we have provided the general link to the Just-in-Time Quick Check webpage for you in the chat box. This will give you the links to all of the quick checks for grades kindergarten through Algebra 1. We're very excited that we will be providing quick checks for geometry and Algebra 2 in the coming months. It will take us a little while to get those prepared and uploaded to the website, but they are coming. And these, the PowerPoints will also be on that website, and we will be posting the recording from each of the webinars to the website also. So it looks like we have some additional time left this morning, and so we can address some of the questions that have come in. I see one question now. It says, can we explain how to access the Desmos Activity Builder? Rhonda, Amy, would one of you like to take that question?
So if you are, if you just go to the Desmos site, like if you're going to look at the other activities that are available, there is a button, so to speak, for an activity builder. It takes you step by step on how to make them. So it basically explains it while you're making it. There's also some good videos on YouTube and other places for how to use it if you want a how-to. And I will say that it's a great way for using this, but I would also say check out the many wonderful activities that have already been created, especially this past year. So in addition to using it for quick checks, there are so many activities available and not just middle school, and not even just 4th and 5th grade that use calculators, but even some of the younger grades have some great activities in there to prepare them for that.
Thank you, Rhonda, and that's a great, that's some great information. Any activity that has already been built by Desmos has been linked to the quick checks, and so you will find that those have been provided for you. And as she indicated, there are some great resources there for all grades, not just your high school students, middle school students. There are even resources that kindergarten and 1st grade students can use. There is a question about Flipgrid. Do I have anyone that wants to take that question this morning?
What was the question about it?
Is Flipgrid secure for school use?
That is a good question. I do know that we are using it in our district. We do have permission from parents to use, but we are using it with our students. And we're very worried about security.
Sorry, Rhonda, we are
Yes,
using it as well, and we also are very worried about security. So I feel like it's probably a safe one to use, and I think it's really great to use because you get to see those students give answers, not just through typing and such, but through video, and the other students get to see them give answers. They can all access that.
And I do know that you can adjust the settings for them to only send it to you as the teacher versus being able to share it with their classmates, and they're not supposed to be able to share publicly.
And as always, check with your school division and your IT department to find out what is allowed in your school division. Many school divisions are using Flipgrid. They're using it within their learning management system. So from a state level, we never tell you what to use or not to use. We always encourage you to check with your local school division to make sure that it is something that is allowable. Another question came in about, were we providing digital resources? No, we are not providing digital resources. We are saying that you can use these resources that have been provided digitally as you deem appropriate. So many school divisions are starting the year out in different ways, and so this was the best way that we could provide them for you. We did learn last night on our webinar, our K3 webinar, that by having these in a PDF format and in a Word format, that you can use them in your digital platforms in many ways. Many school divisions are using Nearpod, and Nearpod is a free resource that is available for school divisions, and we learned that they are having a lot of success in uploading the quick checks in Nearpod for student use.
Also keep in mind that
come in
because everybody uses different platforms, if we were to put it in a digital resource, it would narrow down what you had to use in a district, and we don't want to do that.
Very good point, Rhonda. Thank you. Google Jamboard. Would one of you ladies like to take the question about Google Jamboard? How do we find Google Jamboard? I can answer that if you need me to.
I'll take that one too.
Okay.
So Google Jamboard, especially if your school division uses Google products like for Gmail and Google Docs, it comes in if you press your little 9 squares, and then it goes to further choices, and then it's an option. But Google Jamboard is great because you can view a bunch of students at the same time on the teacher's standpoint, and you can write questions in or even paste questions in. I know that there's a lot of features on it, but you kind of have to play with it. And again, I would suggest, like Melody, check with your IT at your district.
Kristen, did you see any questions that we have not addressed thus far?
No, I think you've addressed most of them. There was one question about clarification on the users group, if you just wanted to provide a little bit more clarification about what that involves.
We are seeking teachers and other educators to serve in a users group this year to let us know more information about your experience with using the quick checks with students this upcoming school year. We would like to know what went well, what didn't go so well, and what you might do differently and how you use the quick checks. It's a platform for you to network with other teachers across the state that will be using the quick checks this school year. We are planning to have 4 sessions where you will interact with other teachers across the state. So it may be people within your district, it may be people in other regions of the state that you will be working with and networking with and learning more about how they're using the quick checks in their classroom. And so it's just an opportunity for you to work with other teachers throughout this year as we're all navigating a different environment. And so we will have more information. That's what we have thus far for you. But right now, we just have an interest survey for you to let us know if this is something you might be interested in. If you are, we will follow up with an email with all of the logistics, and then you can make a final determination if this project is something that you would be willing to participate in.
Yeah, we've also had a couple more questions about
the Google form. If you are unable to access the Google form from the chat box, it is hyperlinked within the PowerPoint, And so I encourage you to go to the website, go and look in the PowerPoint and access the link that way.
Yes, and I just put the link to the main just-in-time page that has all of the just-in-time quick checks that we've uploaded so far, as well as the 3 PowerPoints for each grade band session. So that's where you'll also find the recordings when we are able to get the recordings up.
And I see a question that has come in about how you might be interested in participating in 2 different grade bands for the users group. Select the one that you are most interested in for just the interest form. And then when we follow up with an email from you and ask for additional information, you can indicate to us at that time that you are interested in various grade bands.
Yeah, I think just looking at the questions that we've had throughout the hour, there were some various questions about the use of quick checks. And, you know, we provided you with 4 scenarios to give you some examples of how they can be used. But the main idea is that they are meant to be used very flexibly. So there's more than just those 4 situations that we gave you. And again, as far as the virtual format, because so many divisions are using different platforms and have different technology available, we felt like giving you the Word form, Microsoft Word form, and the PDF form, you can utilize it how best works with your division's guidelines. I don't think we had any other questions that we haven't answered. I just want to put a plug in for special educators. I'm hoping that we have both general educators and special educators on this call, because both types of educators are really going to be utilizing these quick checks and finding them to be very helpful. Especially the teacher notes that deal with all the deal with student misconceptions and give ideas on how to address those misconceptions. And it will also provide a lot of really good data for the teachers in terms of grouping students and you know, depending on what model you're using for if you're in a co-teaching setting, you can use the data from those quick checks to form your alternative groupings, to do your stations. The special educators can use that data to design specially designed instruction for the students who have math goals on their IEPs. So definitely, if you're on this call, please share this information with both general educators and special educators so that you can collaborate and try to meet the needs of your students in the best way possible.